guys, it's Jacob from String Buzz here again. This is the third song review I'll be putting up today, hence why I'm in the same clothing for one more time. I know it's a different hairstyle once again today, but it's because I'm having an awful hair day and I can't decide what I want to do with it. If you're wondering why the lighting's so strange, that's because it's the middle of the night. It's currently 9 o'clock, which in the UK, it gets pretty dark in the winter around this time, and I'm out in the annex with all my lovely guitars and such. And so I thought I'd do this review anyway. I know it's a little bit late, but hey, why not? And if you're wondering why I'm still using this mobile setup and you haven't seen the last two videos, then that's because the camera I'm used to using has actually broken. So I'm having to resort to my mobile as I don't really have time to be looking for a brand new video camera right now with what's happening on the site. So now that's all clarified up, I want to apologise for the audio, by the way. We will be working on this to try and make it, just improve it in general, just so you guys can hear my opinion and hear my voice much nicer and much better. But back onto the point here, we have Metallica's brand new song, Atlas Rise. And if you're wondering why I keep looking up and I keep wandering off, that's because I've actually got the article, the original article we put up on stringbuzz.org, the music journalism site. Links are in the description down below. I don't know whether I already mentioned that, but extra plugins. The reason why I'm looking up is because I've got the original article up here. We actually put that out on the day it came out. If you want brand new content and you want to be, updated immediately, everything will come out on the site way before it comes out on YouTube. Simply because the site has to be priority for us, and it's our main source of our fan group, really. We've had some loyal fans on there and we want to keep it that way. So I'll start off by referring to the article because I think it's the most concise article I've had to date. It's actually the most viewed article of all time on the site, despite us having massive interviews with all sorts of signed bands from around the world, including Anarchy Club, Hung, these big signed bands. And yet it's actually this review, this random review, which has generated the most buzz. It really proves that Metallica still has this iron fan base, no matter what anybody tries to sort of critique them about, that they've got some of the most loyal fans in the business, which you've got to admire. So this is the third track that has been released ahead of Metallica's upcoming album, and you know what? It's okay. It's just okay for me. I'm one of the few people who really liked Hardwired. I didn't really get into Moth into Flame. Being a prog fan, it's in my heart not to like these guys, but I do have a soft spot. I've seen a lot of people critiquing this song and Hardwired in particular quite negatively, which I think is quite unfair because if you compare it to the general state of metal and hard rock at the moment, it definitely rises above the rest of it. I even like some of their early 2000 stuff, Metallica. I think they're given an unnecessarily bad time by people who aren't even on their scale. You see these littler bands always critiquing them, and this word critique is often passed around with Metallica. I see a lot of people criticizing them all the time. Yet they've been producing music for 30 years now, and they've obviously been topping the album charts for rock and metal music. So what more can you really ask of them? But this track just never really got going for me. It has everything I like in a Metallica song. I will say that. It has everything which I've always loved in Metallica songs to this point. Yet it just didn't really click with me. Production has to be the big problem, I think. That's probably why it didn't click as well as their previous tracks. Usually I love the production on Metallica tracks, apart from Saint Anger, of course. I don't think anyone likes the production on that. But here I just felt no oomph or impact. The bass is missing, I think. That's the thing I really took away from it. The guitars have a great tone, yes, and even the drums do sound pretty good in parts, but the bass is so darn quiet that each layer doesn't really mesh at all. My subwoofer barely picked up a single beat or note, and that's bad news in this day of age. I mean, especially if you compare it to modern metalcore and thrash metal, each beat and each bass pluck is as loud as they come now. Everything sounds so percussive, and I'd like to hear that more from some more modern Metallica music. They started using it in Hardwired, but in Moth into Flame and here, I didn't hear it quite so much. Everything sounded competent separately, but when chucked together, it just didn't really work. Even James's vocals sounded thin and weak, and the song needed just so much more impact. I think for, like I said, for a modern metal song, it just lacking, that bit of power and that bit of grit to it. A lot of modern metalcore and a lot of thrash, like I mentioned, has this deep and wholesome sound to it, which I've sort of gotten used to now, especially being a prog fan. If you compare this to, say, like an Animals as Leaders production or even a Periphery production, you can just hear everything so much more powerfully, and it's got so much more strength in the mix. Musicality-wise, this has to be much better on paper than it is through speakers. which might sound a little bit weird, but I'm going to clarify it here by referring to the article. The riffs are of a decent quality, though very over-reliant on open strings, I found, but then that's just a thrash thing. That's a thrash staple at this point. They added some very fun time signatures into the transitions too. Heck, they even added 2 or 3 guitar solos, and you can't go wrong with that. I love me a good guitar solo, as you can tell. Guitar is my passion. It all sounds great, like a normal Metallica song. But nothing really jumped out at me. It's as if they were trying too hard to push all their tropes into one song. By the second solo, I felt completely distracted, despite the solo actually being pretty decent. I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't really connect with this track at all. It had a long and intricate bridge, and not even that cheered me up. It might be fallout from earlier tracks I'd listened to that day, but even on the re-listen, I'm still sort of feeling that way. I'm just not connecting with this one quite as much as I really want to, because I think there is a good song here. It's just the execution hasn't quite hit to the standard which I was sort of expecting. I think it's expectations versus reality for me on this track. The lyrics of the song are functional, but the hook didn't do it for me at all. Very cheesy, very outdated, and it screamed dad rock in my honest opinion. James's delivery, as I've mentioned, is a little weak and forgettable. He hasn't really had a great showing on this album as of yet, and I think that's a great shame, because a lot of the reason why I listen to Metallica is for James Hetfield. I think he's a quality musician and an even better rather singer. I think his voice is instantly recognizable, and it's carried a genre for 20 odd years now. So deservedly, I sort of feel like I should hear some more of him really shining out of here. It might be his age is beginning to catch up with him, but I'm sure there are ways around that. I mean, heck, how Black Sabbath got away with the 13 album with Ozzy's voice being as bad as it was, and yet it still sounded as good as usual, I have no idea. But that's the sort of thing I want to see happen. If a vocalist's voice is waning, this goes out to Bon Jovi as well, then you've got to work your way around it, and I don't think it's been worked its way around too well here. So all in all then, I'd probably still recommend this track for a solid listen, maybe 2 or 3 listens, especially for Metallica fans. I think you'll definitely like this one, but for me personally, I just didn't connect and found myself bored as it dragged on. I think it's a great shame, and this is going to be a 5 out of 10 because there's not enough for me to pull it into the green zone. But it's definitely a solid track. Like, it's not a bad track in any way. It's just personal preference. I didn't connect with it very much. So if you enjoyed this review, then please leave a like. Subscribe if you want to see more. Like I said, there's much more content on the stringbuzz.org music journalism site. And I will see you around next time. Bye-bye.